The Officer, known as literally the best class to choose in the entirety of Guts and Black Powder, this man is a force to be reckoned with, and today we're going to be looking into every skinny little detail about the Officer, starting with who is the Officer. The Officer is one of the 7 classes to choose from in Guts and Black Powder, and as you heard in the beginning of the video, is by far the most popular and strongest class in the entire game of Guts and Black Powder. First and foremost, on the surface world, this man's entire shtick, more or less loadout, is very questionable because he wields only a pistol and a saber. However, compared to everyone else who has literally muskets, giant-ass swords, and axes to use, this man is probably just like one of the worst classes to choose for part of weaponry, but you are completely wrong. Even though this man's loadout literally wields a standard pistol with a single shot and okay-ish moderate damage, and just a regular good old-fashioned saber, this is honestly an okay-ish loadout to start with. I mean, not really speaking too much on the pistol part, but definitely for the saber, because the Officer is only a few of the classes currently in the game that has an activation ability. You see, when using the saber after damaging enemies, you are able to build up progression for the charge ability for the saber. Once it's fully charged, you are able to activate this ability, and all nearby teammates, including yourself, will become faster and increase your melee speed for all of your melee weapons, including your teammates, for the next 7 or so seconds. And honestly, being able to run very fast and honestly having an incredibly fast melee rate of fire speed is very useful. However, there's still more to the Officer that makes him a literal one-man army. As you can see, this man has 2 other firearms. The second weapon is the brass pistol. Being somewhat similar to the Seaman's shotgun weapons, this brass pistol is able to do a ton of damage and has an incredible amount of piercing to where they can take down a lot of enemies in a straight line or a somewhat wider radius with a single shot. But the best one, in my opinion, is the double-barreled pistol. This is essentially the default pistol, but literally an upgraded version of it, as you are able to have, of course, 2 barrels to be able to blast from. This does slightly less damage, but seeing the fact that you could literally have 2 barrels to shoot 2 shots is incredibly forgiving, especially when you're also given the option to fire both of the barrels at the same amount of time, doubling the damage. But the really amazing factor about this weapon is that a majority of people are going to be going for bomber kills, and literally having a pistol that has 2 shots is a godsend, especially how frequent bombers are. So this already has like so many points over the brass pistol. Then we have the melees. Now there's only currently one other melee, sadly, and that is the good old-fashioned spear. Now this spear, I believe, does a tiny bit more damage and essentially has just a bigger range to where you can attack enemies with this melee weapon. However, one of the significant differences this weapon has to the good old-fashioned saber melee is that this has a completely different ability than the saber. All nearby teammates who, have spears are able to stand down, hold out their spears, and do an insane amount of damage to enemies. As doing literally infinite damage with your weapon temporarily, literally killing like the champion zombies or even of course the zappers, is incredibly nice. However, this for some reason doesn't affect, the Officer using this, so it only affects their teammates. Then of course we have our standard tacticals. There's nothing new here. Bucket, grenades, tar bottles, which is already crazy good. The fact that you were able to essentially have even more to pile up on your arsenal. We also have, of course, the only consumable, and that is the canteen of courage, aka alcohol. Whenever the player decides to do so, they can essentially down this puppy and essentially have dramatically less damage from getting hit from the undead. This effect also passively regenerates the Officer's melee ability over time in only like a few seconds. Dramatically increase the duration of the ability, going from like 7 seconds to like 15. whole seconds of you guys just constantly charging and running and doing a lot more damage than usual. Now, there is one big negative, and that's the fact that after this whole effect is over with, the officer gets, I guess, a bit of fatigue, and movement speed is drastically decreased, so you better use this pretty much like when you absolutely need to, or just, you know, at the end of a map when you're running to the finish line. And now finally we have is the finale item, and that is the Cavalry Shield. Purchasing this item allows the player to gain access to the Cavalry section, and this essentially allows the player to have increased health since you are literally having armor being very slow. And the one big downside of this armor, a huge drawback, and that is having a limited amount of shots you can fire from your weapons. So if you're a person who, you know, uses your firearms just like any normal person, then do not get this. It's just not worth it at all whatsoever, but it does make, of course, the officer even stronger. Now time to get into my overall pro tips. Using the ability all willy-nilly without even like crucial situations is just a bad move. Only use your ability when you are absolutely needed in the moment.
Number 4.
Downing the alcoholic drink after using your ability won't instantly recharge it. It'll actually take like around 7 or so seconds after the effect just for it to actually start progress to your charge bar. And finally, that is everything you need to know about the officer. In conclusion, this officer is of course extremely strong, literally being able to have a pistol that for some reason has long-ranged capabilities, having 2 shots in each barrel or just 2 shots in the gun, and of course a brass pistol, which is literally just a seaman's shotgun variant, is also crazy enough. And being able to literally have an activation ability that empowers yourself and all your nearby teammates temporarily to literally have the upper hand anytime necessary is just insane. I've been using this guy quite a lot, and Jesus Christ, dude, this video that I posted a long while ago had definitely did not age so well.